Tasha Kheiriddin is the wonderful writer and commentator. You can see her words, read her words in the National Post, among other places. Her latest in the National Post. I just want to read the headline because it's just too good. Tasha Kheiriddin writes this. Mark Carney jumpstarts the Trudeau death watch. Now, when we say death watch, we're talking politically, obviously. But boy, there are a lot of people talking about Justin Trudeau and his expiration date. Tasha Kheiriddin is on the line. Welcome back, Tasha.
Hi, Elias.
So let's get down to this. What happened? What's going on with Mark Carney? And maybe you want to give our listeners a brief reminder of who Mark Carney is and why it relates to the Justin Trudeau quote-unquote death watch.
Yeah, I didn't make up the headline. I can't take credit for it, but yes, it is an attention getter. And it's accurate in the sense that Liberals are, if not overtly talking about what's next, they are covertly talking about it. They're worried because of the polls, and they're looking for people who might be able to fill Trudeau's shoes eventually, whenever that happens. It could be before the next election, it could be after. But people are concerned because the polls are so bad. So one of the people that's been talked about for a while is Mark Carney. I had the chance to see him actually at a conference in Ottawa. He spoke last week where I was speaking on a panel earlier. And he is the former governor of the Bank of Canada. He's also the former governor of the Bank of England. He is currently the chair of Brookfield Asset Management and also the UN Special Envoy on Climate Change and Finance. So lots of titles, lots of things he's done. He's written a book called Values, which describes his view of a more just world. And if I had to situate him politically, I would say he is certainly not as far left as the current regime. He's more of a Martin liberal, I would say, if he's a liberal at all, because he's not affiliated officially with a party. But he is certainly would appeal to both the business and the progressive side. He believes in things like the carbon tax. So, we part company on that one. But I do agree with him on the need to reduce the size of government. He's not a huge spender. He understands how economics works. So he knows when you put more money in the economy, what it does to inflation, that kind of thing. But he's very smart. He's very erudite, and he was actually very low key too. Like as a person, I was, I'll say impressed by that. He's not, he's not full of himself. Put it that way. And I think we need politicians who are a bit humble. So he'd be a good one, I think.
And I find him fascinating. The premier of this province, François Legault, he basically has his own Oprah's book club, right? Like he posts like on weekends. He'll be like, here's the book I read this week, and this list is he's all over the place. But, one of the books that he's recommended to all Quebecers at one point is a Mark Carney book. So I take that as an example of how he seems to resonate with all types of people. But do you... you mentioned, where he is politically in the, the spectrum here. I feel like the Liberal Party, there's a couple of things that I think are going against that. I think the Liberal Party has gone far to the left, too much far to the left for Mark Carney to fit in that party anymore.
Well, in its current incarnation, but that's the problem. The reason it's so low in the polls is because of that. It's abandoned a lot of the fiscal prudence it had under Chrétien with Martin, for example. It's abandoned the notion of a big tent. It's really become much more progressive, much more aligned with further left stuff, cozying up to the NDP, basically to stay in power. But I think also partly because of the vision. Trudeau's vision has always been further to the left than his predecessors, and more in line with some of the things that you see in the U.S. That sort of divide that's playing out. That's what we're seeing in Canada now. A big polarity between conservatives on the one hand, who are, seen as, how should I put it, populist, anti-woke, appealing to that sort of the common sense, as Pierre calls it, which is something I actually wrote about in my book. I didn't call it common people, but I did call it common sense. But that view versus the progressive, very woke left, all about it's essentially diversity, but not I don't think it's inclusive. I think it's very divisive to always divide people into camps based on their identity, but identity politics is a big thing for the Trudeau Liberals. So, it's a polarity that we see more and more in this country. And I think the traditional Liberal view and the traditional progressive conservative was more of a big tent that had the middle in it and some of the other, as in some of the left and some of the right.
Well, we're in agreement there, right? I often joke that, the current Liberal government is government by CTV's The Social. I mean, basically that's what
I
we
don't
have.
watch it anymore.
Well, but that's what it is, right? And obviously they have past members of CTV's The Social in their government, right?
This is true.
So it just makes sense. But here's one thing about Mark Carney. Here's another worry I have. Remember what happened to Michael Ignatieff?
Yes.
And Mark Carney comes across. He may be the smartest guy in the room, but he's got the smell of elitism just on his past and that kind of thing. And I don't know if that's what Canadians want either.
Well, some don't, for sure. And this is what I do mention in the article. I said that his Achilles heel is the memories of Michael Ignatieff. You could bottle that as a sauce. It's like it strikes terror in the heart of every Liberal. In 2011, they were reduced to third place. And, the tag of just visiting, seeing him as a disconnected intellectual, not someone of the people, not someone able to relate to voters, that was really dangerous. The party can't afford that again. I don't think Carney is, he didn't, like I said, strike me as that aloof type of intellectual. He's an intellectual, for sure. But he was very down to earth. So I don't think that personality-wise he would fall into that trap. The danger, though, is, like you said, the background, the pedigree, intellectualism, and the Conservatives are all, anti-elite, anti-this, anti-that, if you have a degree, you almost suspect, right? That could be a problem. But, again, we don't know where things will be in a couple of years. Right now, there's a big wave of populism, anti-elitism. It's very hot. In a couple of years, will people still be that angry at elites? I mean, my point has always been that if you want the middle class, especially the new Canadian middle class, they want their kids to be elites. Like, bashing elites is not really, you talk to any family that's come here from India, China, they want their kids to be professionals. They want them to, in some cases rise above what the parents will do, because even if parents have degrees, sometimes they can't use them here. They're working in jobs that they didn't, weren't doing back home. They want their kids to have a certain status. And so that aspect of it is like bashing elites. Well,
it's because you have to keep it, Tasha, you have to keep it aspirational.
So, exactly.
And that's that's what we've lost, right? That sort of, it's no longer in many circles deemed as aspirational. And I think the left has to answer for that, because I think sometimes it's about the messaging there. Tasha, listen, to wrap up here, on Justin Trudeau, sure he could run it out for another 2 years here, but do you think that's what's going to happen? I hear tons of murmurs that, internally Liberals are not happy.
Yeah, they murmur, but the question really is twofold. One is timing of the election. You need to have, if he steps down, you need a runway for a new leader to set in. You need a race. You need them to establish themselves. You want buzz, and then you may want to pull the trigger right after if they're well known enough, or you might want to give them space to become known. So that's an issue. Second is, he's the leader of the party, and leaders have egos, and leaders have followers, and he has a hold on the party still, in terms of his control over the apparatus of the party. And so it's hard to break through that if you don't have a machine of your own, and you can't force him out, right? He's got to make that decision. So who's talking to him? Who's telling him things? What are his alternatives if he were to step down? Where would he go? Like, all these things play into it. I don't know what's in his head. This guy could make a mint just traveling the world speaking at conferences. It's done. I don't know. You think they'd want? He's made so many enemies around the world now. I'm not sure.
I don't know. He still has his backers, right?
Of course.
Tasha, we got to leave it there. It's always great talking to you.
Thank you. Bye, Elias.
That's Tasha Kheiriddin, writer, commentator. Read her words in the National Post and, of course, her Substack.